Hello guys, and welcome to another video in my YouTube channel. In this video we will be talking a little bit about equations. So now, we will first start off by talking about something called a variable. Now what is a variable? A variable is anything that has an unknown value. So a variable is anything that has an unknown value but that needs to be found out. Oops, sorry, I spelled that wrong. Unknown value. So now, how would you write a variable in an equation? So an equation would be something on this side equals something on that side, as it's called an equation, so there would be an equal sign. How would that work? Let's take an example. 2 plus x equals 3. This is a very easy example. Most people already know how to solve this, but let me just go through it with you. So now, 2 plus x equals 3. After looking at this problem, what do you think the variable would be? Well, it would be x, because as I mentioned earlier, a variable is anything that has an unknown value. And the equation, well, it's right here. This is the equation, as there's an equal sign in the middle. And in my future videos, I'll explain what an inequality is, but an inequality has a greater than or less than sign. An equation will always have an equal sign. So now let's see how to solve this problem. Well, what you always want to do when solving these type of problems is leave the variable, variable on one side and put everything else on the other. How do you do that? Let's see. So 2 plus x equals 3. So what should you take out from this side to leave just x? Well, you should take out 2. You can subtract 2 from this side, but as this is an equation and both sides are equal, if you subtract 2 from one side, it's required that you subtract 2 from the other side. If this was, for example, negative 2 plus x, or negative 2 plus x, or x minus 2, because they're the same thing. Oops, I wrote negative 2. Sorry about that. I wrote negative 2 plus x, or x minus 2, since they're the same thing. It would be adding 2 to both sides, as you always use the inverse sign. If it's addition, you use subtraction. If it's multiplication, you use division. So now coming back to this problem. So now let me try to solve it on the bottom here. So as I mentioned, you subtract 2 from both sides, you would be left with x equals 3 minus 2. That's simple, x equals 1, and that would be your final answer. Now let's try and solve this with a different problem. So now let's try it with a problem with, instead of addition, subtraction. Let's do x minus 50. X minus 50 is equal to 1,000. So now, in this case, what would you do? As I mentioned, you would keep x on one side, but since it's minus 50, you would do the inverse and add 50 to both sides. One common mistake while you're solving a problem with multiplication is when the problem is 50 minus x is equal to 1,000. In this case, most people tend to add 50 to both sides, but it's actually the exact opposite. You would subtract 50 from both sides, because the negative sign stays with the x, as the negative sign is right before the x. In this case, the negative sign is right before the 50, so it's negative 50. But in this case, it's 50 plus negative x, technically. So you would technically still subtract 50 and not add 50. Now, coming back to that problem, you would get x equals 1,000 plus 50. So x is equal to 1,050. Now let's try an example with multiplication. So now let's use the example 13x actually that's a hard example. 2x plus 7 equal to 19. How do you solve this? Well, you can start off by dividing both sides by 2, but you should always start off with the easiest step, which is subtracting. You should always do either addition or subtraction first, and then go to multiplication or division, as that makes the problem much easier. So now let's subtract first. You would subtract 7 from both sides since it's the opposite, since it's the inverse operation, and you would get 2x is equal to 19 minus 7. 2x is equal to 12. Now, what is 2x? 2x, if you know, is the same as 2 times x. So 2 times x would be equal to 12. Now, since there's multiplication here, what would you do? Well, you would divide both sides by 2, as division is the opposite of multiplication. Dividing both sides by 2. And you would come up with an answer of x is equal to 6. Now, let's try the same thing with one last problem, but this time we will be using division. So, yeah, here we go. So let's use the problem 2x divided by 4 is equal, this is a little harder one, to 16. So now, you can obviously divide both sides first because there's a multiplication here, but the division step is after that, and it's much easier if you do the division and then multiplication first. So now, 2x divided by 4 equals 16. Since division is, the opposite of division is multiplication, you would multiply both sides by 4 first, times 4, and then times 4. So you would get 2x is equal to 16 times 4. 2x is equal to 64. So now you would do the same thing that I mentioned in the previous problem. You would divide both sides by 2, since division is the opposite of multiplication. And you would come up with x is equal to 32. Let me just confirm this is correct. How can you confirm? You can substitute x into the equation as 32. Divided by 4 equals 16. So what is 2 times 32? It's 64. Divided by 4 is 16. 16 equals 16. So that shows that we got this answer correct, and we are done. So thank you for listening to my video, everyone. I hope you enjoyed and learned a lot. In this video, I talked about equations. In my next video, I'll be talking a little bit about inequalities, which instead of having an equal sign, have either a greater than, less than, greater than, equal to, or less than equal to sign. That will be a little more confusing topic, and I may do an extra video on that topic. Thank you, everyone. Please remember to subscribe and smash that like button so you'll know when more of my videos will come out. I hope to see you in my next video. Bye.